Hello everyone, this is the 1 Hour Gameplay channel and today I have some very interesting news for you. Two different MMORPGs may be released this summer, but the community consisting of fans of the genre may not wait for this event, so it's time to talk about one of the closest launches for the current year. If you follow the industry closely, for you will not be surprised that the focus of our attention will be the project Mad World, which is actually completed at the moment. For the first time about such an unusual MMORPG project became known back in February 2018. More than 5 years ago, the developers of the South Korean studio Jandisoft published on their small YouTube channel an equally small teaser trailer of the upcoming project, which showed the general public a very unusual game style and some game mechanics, as well as introduced the future concept. An important difference that allowed to attract, albeit not very, a large but still attention was a unique visual component. The developers have decided to execute their project not only in an absolutely unusual for us graphic component, so still in the 2D style. Yes, you heard right. Mad World is the second MMORPG in the history of the genre which do not do in 3D. As paradoxical as it may sound, but the first and last product until recently was Ultima Online, released in 1997 and which required from you as much as 32 megabytes of RAM. Curiously enough, over the past 5 years the game went through essentially a full development cycle. It's hard to call the Korean studio strongly communicative, but it is in matters of testing she was quite open. Over the years the developers conducted at least 5 alpha tests, and some were launched solely due to the request from the players. On 27th of April Mad World will be finally unleashed into your world. Even more interesting situation is when we learn that the Korean company Jandisoft for all time has released only one game, or rather not even not released but was in development. We are talking, of course, about Mad World, which is still kind of out. MMORPG, this is a very difficult genre to develop and it's very strange to see the debut project in its style. However, if we try to assess the brainchild of the company sensibly, it turns out quite an interesting situation. First of all, you should know that the project will be available on all platforms. Yes, you can play in Mad World on PCs and on all consoles, including Nintendo. For these gourmets will be present version for iOS and Android devices. However, and this is not all, it is not known whether it will be available this feature on the release, but in general, the developers plan to launch their project for browsers, which will allow you to play it from your favorite Google Chrome or Opera directly at work. So it's time to write in the comments. What do you think about it? If we talk about the popularity of such an unusual project, then visually everything is not so bad. In mid-February 2023, the developers have opened the official pre-registration and booking of names. Simply put, right now on their website you can create your own account and at the same time take a name for your character. In just a month, the project without any advertising campaign has managed to collect 100,000 registrations, which is certainly not as much as the same Tower of Fantasy or New World, but still quite enough to say that there is interest in the project. Given that in the very near future, developers plan to officially announce the exact release date of the game, we can assume that interest will grow a little more, which means you play alone definitely will not have. With the creation of the project, as you can see, all seems clear. The developers have not been marked in the high-profile scandals and were not caught on the rod of dozens of postponements. Mad World was created in a quite calm and can even say in measured, in which the development team did not hurry anywhere and tried to bring the project to the level that they would be satisfied. In such circumstances, we have quite a logical question, but what are the mechanics of the project and what it will be able to please us? In fact, the developers put in the basis of his future MMORPG a huge number of very interesting mechanics that may interest you. As you have noticed, Mad World isometric style, and technically it inherits a lot of projects made in this genre. For example, it is quite strongly oriented on projects like Diablo or Path of Exile, and it has literally put the main rival game from Activision Blizzard. Accordingly, here, much of the attention is given to building the right branch of talent. At this point, the project has no complaints because you have at your disposal over 800 different perks that can change your game process depending on your needs. Users who have already had time to test Mad World in past tests often compare it to the Path of Exile and report that the brainchild of Korean studio is not very inferior to him. Of course, if we are talking specifically about this element of gameplay, and even more impressions from the builds you get when you learn that this project completely revolves around a non-target combat system, and in fact, it's purely non-target. After all, in the same Diablo on the target is still needed. As for the usual more standard content, there will be both PvP and PvE content, with the latter disclosed much better than the first. However, let's start with the battles between the players. In this direction, the developers have decided to go for complete freedom. There is no faction, and so there is a standard PK system, which is inherent in most MMORPGs. As long as you are in the city, you cannot attack, and no another user cannot inflict you damage, but if you leave him, you instantly become available for attack. At the moment, there are no protected locations where you can sit back, so in the course of his wanderings need to be constantly ready to engage in battle. Even harder this component looks when we learn that in death you do not lose your loot, but lose experience. This is certainly not very critical. After all, in Mad World it is earned very quickly, but you should understand that bumping into Gunker or even a group, you cannot bad so sag on the experience earned. So you may have to change your location. In fairness, it should be noted that this is not going to stop, because the developers from Jandisoft have already confirmed the presence of arena on which users will be able to fight among themselves for valuable rewards. As far as it is known, there will even be a rating system, so you can show people around you how talented player. Will be present locations with permanently enabled PvP mode, where for the victory over the other players you will receive a unique currency, which is needed to acquire equipment, which hints at the fact that the cooperation with other users and large-scale open-world battles will not be rare. Everything is much more interesting with the PvE component. Although the game has already been tested several times, but to see all the content we were not given, because of this to the end is unknown. What exactly we prepared the development team? We know for sure that there will be 4 types of activities. First, Mad World has at its disposal standard dungeons with multiple bosses and elite opponents. Some of them will be possible to pass alone, and some will require you to have a group. At the moment, the latter is more common, and in general it should be noted that they are very interesting. Tactics are certainly not very complicated, but differ from one dungeon to another. At a high level the situation changes, and there it becomes a full-fledged content. Secondly, Jandisoft added full-fledged raid system to the project. This means that some of the most valuable loot can be obtained exclusively in cooperation with a large number of other players. In the third world, bosses will be waiting for you. Specifically, this activity is not disclosed very much, but rather due to the fact that any battle with the boss in the open world carries a certain PvP risk. Simply put, you can get hit in the back another raiding party and lynch you. This is why loot from world bosses is very different in quality and head over heels better than anything you could get in a closed PvE activity like dungeons or raids. The fourth activity here, on the other hand, is Endless Towers. In essence, this is a dungeon in which there is a continuous revival of enemies, and with each wave they become stronger and stronger. The longer you hold out, the better the loot. Content is not very monotonous because there are a lot of enemies in the set, and that means that they can also entertain you. On the other hand, it is aimed at single exploration, which leads us to the fact that most of the valuable items will be obtained from other activities. Add to this a small set of professions, and we get a pretty good MMORPG. Yes, perhaps not the most ideal in some places, but certainly quite unusual. And that means it's definitely worth a look. Or is it? Here comes the system of monetization of the project and the developer's approach to what you get in the game. It also turned out that the lion's share of items will not be personal, which means you will be able to transfer it. Sell products will be possible in different ways, but one of the key will be the auction. It's quite a handy trick, which is often missing in many similar projects and eventually forces players to go to a third-party platform or even correspond on the forum. The auction allows you to easily sell any item you receive to another player. However, if you don't need in-game currency, you can go the other way and use the black market. The black market is the same as the auction with one small difference. All goods on it will be sold for currency from the in-game store. Do you want the closest example in terms of mechanics? Recall Lost Ark. Purely technically, the approach is very close, except that a few extra currencies no one did. Anyway, you can buy crystals in the store, and then sell them by equipping your hero in the best armor items, which pretty quickly brings us to the rocks called pay to win. Here, no one is even trying to hide it, and so it is served very openly. Will it affect what happens in gameplay? What do you think? Mad World is one of the most interesting MMORPGs in terms of visuals for the last 2 decades. The developers have really worked on this component and were able to create the most unique project. What adds to the sophistication is that the concept itself is very dark and gloomy. This is not a cheerful rainbow MMORPG with a lot of colors like World of Warcraft. No, it's a very dark, unpleasant, and often even frightening world that you have to explore and investigate. It's hard to say how good this game will be, but if judging by the past tests in general, the gaming community has always been quite satisfied, which seems to be a good indicator. Will Mad World be able to catch our attention for a long time? We'll find out very soon, because the release is going to happen in April 27, 2023. That ends my video. If you liked it or was helpful, please like it and share your thoughts in the comments. Also, do not forget about the subscription because it really strongly motivates me to the soonest. It really motivates me to release new content as soon as possible and allows you to get timely notification of its release. Thanks in advance for your activity and see you very soon.